G'day, this is Big Brody Marshall.
This is Brian Alvarez.
This is Dean Brady of the Millennials.
This is the Jurassic Punk Sid Parker.
How many of you guys have heard the term kickback?
Hello, doggers. This is Jay Hunter from OSW Review.
This is Mac Grim Basso.
This is the loosest in Australian wrestling, Adam Brooks.
This is Scrap Brand Adam Pearce, and you are locked in to Wrestle Radio Australia.
Welcome everyone to Australia's longest running Australian wrestling podcast, Wrestle Radio Australia. I'm your host, Todd Eastman. Hope you've had as much fun as you possibly can in these trying times this week. This isn't going to be a massive intro to this week because we do have a long episode when you look at the times. Not so much on the podcast version, but definitely in the Vodcast version, because we are doing a special segment with my guest this week, Davis Storm. Anyone who knows Australian wrestling knows who Davis Storm is. He is the Godfather of Australian wrestling. And we had a great chat in the actual interview portion that will be on the podcast. And also, if you're watching this on the podcast, we're doing, after we do our little interview or our little chat that we have, we're going to be breaking down one of his matches, and that is the Go For Broke match against Marcuis Pitt, which was a really interesting chat. It was great to watch. If you're a fan of the inner workings of a professional wrestling match, this is really going to be something that you're going to like, because he does break down a lot of things. And I learned so much just sitting there with him talking about this match while the match was going on, because then he can explain things while it's happening. I found it very, very interesting. Other news PWA announced that their Coliseum date is tentatively in October. So fingers crossed for that one, and congratulations to Royce Chambers for being the first guy announced in that tournament. So fingers crossed, October, we'll all be back to entertaining you guys, and then you guys will be back to coming out and watching us work. So who knows? But we're doing, everyone, all of us are doing a great job staying home, social distancing, all of that jazz is helping. You can see, if you just look at the daily reports of the new cases and all of that stuff, that curve is flattening, and we are well on our way to hopefully getting back to whatever the new normal is in society. So fingers crossed. That being said, let's get straight to the interview. Davis Storm, one of my favorite guests. He's one of those guys, I'm say just straight to it and then I talk more. He's one of those guys that when you talk to him, after you talk to him, you feel good for a good day or two afterwards. He really does. He has just energy about him that makes you feel good. And I definitely have for the last couple of days after I filmed this. So send you to it right now. Interview Davis Storm, Wrestle Radio Australia. Davis Storm, thank you very much for joining me tonight, mate.
It's a pleasure, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't know why I keep saying like tonight and all that stuff, because who knows when these people watch these things or listen to them.
That's it. They got plenty of time during the day to do whatever they want now, don't they?
Well, yeah. For a lot of people, they do. For a lot of people, and that's basically why I've started doing the Vodcast version of it, because people have got nothing to watch, especially wrestling wise now. Unless you're digging into the archives, there's nothing new for me anyway. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time watching the Empty Arena stuff for the American.
Yeah, look, I'd be honest, I haven't tuned into any of it other than I watched a couple of matches at WrestleMania, just sort of check in. I watched a few matches on the first day, didn't watch anything on the second day yet, unfortunately. I'm still dying to get to the Rhea Ripley Charlotte match, which I heard was a cracker.
Yes.
But yeah, look, wrestling is a live interactive performance. Without that audience, it definitely loses something. You can do other forms, which is what I think a lot of people are falling into now, is trying different ways of tackling it. But to me, it just doesn't, it can be entertaining, but it doesn't quite feel like pro wrestling to me.
No. I even did an experiment because it's like, the wrestling isn't bad. It's just I can't, for some reason, I'm not connecting with it. So what I did is I'd ripped one of the matches. I think it was like the triple threat with Big E and John Morrison and Miz. And then I got crowd noise and I dubbed it underneath. Found it so much easier to watch.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I don't know what it is. It must just be, yeah. Maybe it feels like it feels like other people are enjoying it as well.
We're so used to that being part of the experience. It's just there is much an actor and a character in professional wrestling as the wrestlers and the referee and the commentators.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the same with a lot of things. I found a lot of the TV shows now that used to have the live audiences that now go to like the bare, just them in the studio. It's a stark difference between viewing experience between what it was before, because you get that reaction, you get that laugh from the crowd as well, that you're laughing as well, but it's still and I think it's easier for the guys, especially like comedians, to bounce off a laugh, much as it would be for you guys to bounce off a pop or bounce off a crowd swelling up, like wanting you to have a comeback, than it is when you're just in there basically training, because that's basically what training is. You're having a match with no one reacting to it.
Yeah, spot on. There's not that immediate feedback, which is such a vital part of what we do.
You got really close when this thing sort of kicked off to being almost stranded in my neck of the woods. So it really came touch and go for you. So how hard? It wasn't really a hard decision for you to make, but how up in the air was it for you?
Look, it was a big decision to make, because it was a big commitment by the boys from Australian Wrestling League and myself to make the decision to run a week's worth of seminars there. And everything in me, probably from the Wednesday, I think myself and Jesse agreed to call things off on the Saturday, I think, which was a day before I was due to fly. But I was really questioning it from about the Wednesday. I've been following this fairly closely. My wife's a nurse, so we tried to stay fairly well informed, and it just didn't feel right. And the closer it got as things were starting to explode, the main factor that played heavily into my decision was just I couldn't afford to be halfway across the country stranded from my family if this all hit the fan. So if it was just myself to consider, I probably would have still gone ahead and come over and just chanced my arm. But the idea of being over there and potentially being stranded there, we didn't know what would happen with flights. And if I did get back, I'd then have to go into isolation for 14 days. And as I said, my wife's a nurse, so if she got called into work to help out, what would happen to the kids? So it was just too big a risk at this stage, unfortunately.
Yeah, you'd be yelling behind a closed door, "Stop that! Sit down!"
That's right. I can't do anything, but in 2 weeks' time when I get out of here,
I'm writing this down.
Yeah, I'm writing a list.
But yeah, no, it was the complete right decision to make. What the decision you made, because I think I even messaged you and said that's like family is first above all else. Yep. Wrestling is something we love. Family shit. That's your home. That's your base. That's your heart. And it was. I think you guys in EPW made the same decision that the MC Dub and that we made up here to cancel the shows. Before, I think they even brought in the restrictions on the crowd sizes.
Yeah.
So
we had a small show set to take place at our training center, one of our showcases, and we moved pretty quickly on that. Like there was already a lot of discussion before I was due to leave. There was a lot of discussion about training, and a few of us trainers had already, without being prompted, we'd gone to non-contact sessions where we stipulated before people got there, no shaking hands, no hugging. When you get there, we'll do our cardio, make sure you keep an acceptable distance away from each other. I wasn't doing any in ring because the chance that someone would sweat and then someone else would get in the ring, even if they were getting in there individually one at a time, there's still the chance that it could be transmitted. So we were just doing a lot of lot of character-based stuff. I actually got the guys into playing charades because I've come to realize through playing with my kids that wrestling is really a big game. So much of it is a big game of charades where we need to emote and express using our body and our hands and not being able to use our voice. So it's something a tool I'm definitely going to take forward is getting trainees to play charades. So much of our physical movement and our expression tells the story of what's going on. I need to hit the back of the venue. So if I can talk constantly and maybe the people in the front row pick that up. But if I plan on telling my story through only my voice, it's going to get lost the further back you sit in the venue. But if I can use my body to express myself and show people the emotions that I'm going through and the struggle that I'm going through, then that becomes a vital part of the performance. So playing charades is something that's definitely going to be a part of the EPW School of Pro Wrestling curriculum going forward.
And how hard would have that must have been to just try and enforce? Because I know like wrestling is a very like contact, like touchy-feely. Like everybody you walk in, you give someone a handshake. If you really you're really good friends, you hug them. That's got to be very hard, especially when you're in a large group as you are, because wrestling, like rosters and that, tend to be like large groups of people that are extremely close. How hard was it for them just even going in to not have to, not handshake, not like hug, not do any of that in a group setting like that?
Yeah, you could definitely feel a little bit of tension when you were there with everyone because it was second nature to do those things, and it felt really foreign to not welcome people into class that way. It felt almost like you were creating a bit of distance between yourself and them because it did feel so strange. Yeah, but you know, this has very much been a case where. And this affected the decisions we made on training, the decisions we made on shows, and the decisions we've made as individuals as well, that there are times, and we've never really had to face this in our lifetime, which is something you and myself were talking about earlier, but this is something we haven't had to face before. And there are times in your life where we live in a really self-absorbed time where people just like to do what they want when they want. But unfortunately, sometimes society and the greater good comes before the individual. And that's something I very much preach at EPW, just team first. And I believe that for me, prioritizing the team as much as I've been able to over the last 18, 19 years has been a huge part of my own personal enjoyment. And it's also contributed hugely to the esteem that I'm held in as well, which, you know, that's not why I didn't start out to do those things in the beginning because I thought that in 18 years' time, I would flippantly call myself the Godfather of Perth Wrestling and people might take that seriously. But contributing to the team and seeing other people succeed has always been really important to me. I remember saying to a good friend of mine before I even started that I didn't feel like I would ever make it, but I felt like I could help somebody make it. And that's been really important to me to try and contribute back to the team and just give as much of yourself as you can back to people. And making responsible decisions is a part of that. It's not just about giving back to your own community, the wrestling community. It's about giving back to the wider community and doing the responsible thing for society.
Yeah, well, like you, I knew because of how old I was when I started, I was never going to do anything with it. I was 35 when I started training, but I thought if I can just help people in some way, shape or form to go further on for what they want to do, then that's basically me living my dream, I guess, because the dream of going any further is just not a viable one for me. But the dream of me being able to help someone get there, that's something I can achieve. Yeah,
absolutely.
So you guys have moved from your because you can't get together anymore, because I know you've got in WA it's very much like two people in a play. I think it's like it is up here in Brisbane where you're only allowed to have two people in a area or something like that. So you guys have moved your classes onto Zoom, I heard. you're doing seminars and whatnot on Zoom. What do they focus around? Is it more like promos, character? Do you actually get to talk about the in-ring sort of stuff, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we branch off into different sections. So the 4 trainers that are primarily running most of the online seminars have been myself, Damien Slater, Marcuis Pitt, and Gavin McGavin. We've then also had Hayden Zaneth is running some online workouts for the crew. Slater's been also posting a lot of workout of the days and stuff like that up. On the weekends, we've all been doing the Gotch Bible and just posting our times online so that everyone can sort of track what each other is doing. Sunday's promo day, so everyone gets to post their promo up there. We give a bit of feedback. But the seminars have been really wide-ranging. We've also been lucky enough to have a few guest seminars too. So we had one with Mike Quackenbush last week, which from all reports was fantastic. I couldn't make it, unfortunately. Can't give up Saturday mornings with my kids, unfortunately. So, and our good pal Rocky Monero popped in as well. I've got Ryan Eagles. Dougie's lined up to pay us a visit sometime next week. So the seminars have been really wide-ranging. For myself, I tend to focus more on match planning and psychology. That's kind of number one for me. Slater's been taking a lot of classes about, it's not just about the wrestling improvement. Slater's doing a lot of stuff on goal setting and planning out how to achieve, essentially. But he's also been doing things on tech wrestling as well. I know Gavin McGavin has done seminars on tag wrestling and on promos. Marcuis Pitt's, he's done some fantastic work on nutrition in the last few weeks, which is, it's an often forgotten part of what we do. And this is a really good opportunity for our students to, you can blindly go along and keep rocking up to training every week and just do what your instructor tells you to do each week. Do a certain amount of squats, do a certain amount of push-ups, get in the ring, run the ropes, take a hip toss. But to be put in a situation where you have to think for yourself. So maybe Slater's taking something on character, and within that, he'll set out a bunch of questions and give them a questionnaire, and then they will have the floor for a couple of minutes to be able to explain what it is. Slater will set out these questions. They've got to answer them and sort of explain what they have in mind for a character. And there might be other sessions like mine. Mine are very much one-way traffic, because once my mouth starts moving, I have an awful lot of trouble getting it to stop. So, but I've been doing a lot of match breakdowns and stuff like that more than anything. But yeah, it's been a great time to just take a step back and force these guys to think about what they're doing, whether that's the psychology of what they do, whether it's their character work, whether it's their promos that need touching up, whether it's their nutrition that needs addressing, or whether they've blindly been going along and not really setting any real hard and fast goals for themselves, and in turn maybe not achieving the things that they could. There's so many layers to self-improvement, and we've got so many great coaches at the School of Pro Wrestling that there are people who have a role as an official coach, and then there are just people who've been around the business for a very long time who have a good head on their shoulders. So there's plenty of help there for the guys and girls who are just starting out. And for myself, I just find it really rewarding still being able to coach in some sort of fashion, still being able to get in a room with these people who I've been attached to for a really long time, and getting to talk about this thing that we love. The other thing I really try to do in all of mine, and you can't do it in every class, but it's just have a bit of a mental health check at the beginning of the class too. Just check in with everyone. There would be cases for some of these guys who live on their own or live with one other person where they just don't get a chance to talk that much during the days. So just, 90 seconds to be able to hear someone's story and whether they're struggling and how they're coping with motivation to get their workouts done or keep their nutrition on track, or just keep their head above water. For some people, I think for a lot of wrestlers, most of us just knuckled down and went, well, we're still going to get the work done somehow, because that's a very wrestler mentality. But there are people who are genuinely struggling who just, the idea of doing a workout is just out of the question at the moment because they just need to get their mental state right. So just checking in with everyone and hearing everyone's voice and having that little bit of community still to lean back on in a time where everyone feels isolated and is struggling a bit is really important.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a big thing that I talk about a lot on this show, especially is the mental health and making sure that everyone, if you have problems, to talk about it because it's the best way to help you sort through it yourself. Because that's really, no one can help you. No one can solve all your problems. You have to sort them out yourself. But sometimes having someone as a sounding board helps you sort that out in your head.
Yeah. Yep. They always say, when the student is ready, the master appears. Like all the lessons we need in life and all the help that we ever need is probably there. You just need to get yourself into a situation where you're ready to hear those words or you're ready to hear that voice. And once you're there, you hope that the right voice is there whispering in your ear instead of the wrong voice.
Speaking about the right voice whispering in the ear, how do you deal with the sort of the new style of the indie wrestling is very much sort of like big spot, big spot, big spot, big spot. How do you deal with like mixing in your love of actual psychology into that style of into the sort of the new style of the indie wrestling? Because I know you're very much like myself and Rocky, and we love the story. We're all about the story. Yep. And there is sometimes where I go, that's a really good match, but it didn't do anything for me because it was like, you guys were awesome. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't taken on a ride for it. So how do you sort of preach that to the new guys that this is like, essentially we're all storytellers here?
Yeah. I think most importantly, the EPW crowds in particular are very story oriented. They're invested in characters and journeys more than they're invested in the next cool move. Don't get me wrong, if they see something really innovative or whatever, there'll still be a great reaction to it. But in terms of investment, the best thing you can do is get a combination of those things, like the Street Gang Hooligans, who are both on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but those guys can do the amazing stuff, but you still feel an emotional connection to those guys. They're such plucky underdog characters that you want to go to bat and support them still. They know how to sell, they know how to get a crowd invested in what they're doing, and that to me will always be number one. And I think that still rings true for the most part in professional wrestling these days. And I think a lot of the lack of reaction is possibly bad booking in some cases in certain promotions and bad there's been a huge push towards a meme style of wrestling or a GIF style of wrestling. And, a lot of times I see matches that have had a lot of hype behind them because of certain moves or certain moments. But to me, that might garner an online attention. I have no interest in doing that first and foremost. My interest is in serving the people who have paid money to come and see me in a live setting, because that's what I do. That is primarily what I do, is I take my performance and I give it to the 200, 300, 400 people that rock up on that given night. And, we live in an age of VOD and GIFs and all this sort of stuff, so that the echoes of what you've done can reach much further than we would have been able to back in the day, where you were just wrestling for the people who were there on that night. But to me, you've got to serve that audience first. And for me, I'm not fulfilled knowing that I did 2 or 3 shit hot moves that are going to make excellent 13-second videos. I want to take people on a journey, and I'm fortunate enough that I'm at a point in my wrestling now where I don't, and don't get me wrong, I still love we do the Royal Show here for the last couple of years, and those matches are very very character heavy, and you're wrestling for people who don't really understand wrestling. So you're trying to give them a baseline. You're relying on a lot of wrestling tropes and just trying to draw them in through a very basic style of wrestling. But I'm at a point where I can pick and choose what I want to do. And it's less about the matchups and more about the stories. I need some sort of emotional investment, because if I don't have an emotional investment in what I do, there's no chance that I'm going to be able to convince an audience that I give a shit whether I win this match or not. Because I'm at a point in my career where wins and losses aren't really going to hurt me or prop me up all that much. It doesn't mean all that much to me. The overarching thing is telling a story and letting people see my growth and my change as an individual, where, you know, a lot of people who've been coming to EPW shows pretty much since we started, and there is a small pocket of them, maybe 10 or 12 who still come, who have pretty much been there since day one. And they've seen me grow up from a angry, angst-filled 21-year-old boy into a father of two, a husband, and a leader of a locker room. And, you know, I can't be the same person in the ring that I was 20 years ago, because I'm not fundamentally the same person anymore. And I've always thought that the best wrestling characters find a way to meld as much of their real life into what they take to the ring. You rely on a lot of real emotion. You rely on a lot of real feelings and motivations. So it's important to me to tell a story that means something to me. And my last 3 big matches in Perth have all meant something to me. And that's, I won't get up for a big match if I can't feel something towards what I'm doing. When I challenge Michael Morleone and say, hey, I want to win that belt because my kids are drawing pictures with your name on it because they never saw me wear that belt. That's my real life. My kids were drawing that picture in the crowd 20 minutes before I had to go out and promo on this guy. But that's a real story. That's not hard for me to tell. And it won't resonate with everyone. And I'm fine with that. I would rather really grab 100 out of the 300 by the throat and really give them something that they walk away from feeling differently about the wrestling business than have 300 people cheering, but then not really remembering the story that was told on the night. Here is a father who's trying to win a belt to prove to his kids that he can still hang. And I think that doesn't appeal to a 21-year-old kid in the crowd who doesn't have kids, but to the 35-year-old father with 2 or 3 kids in the crowd, that strikes a chord with that guy or lady. So, and that's way more important to me.
Yeah. And you've hit the nail on the head there, because I remember talking a while ago to a couple of the guys up here when they talked about, asked me to critique their promos. And I was like, stop playing your character and be your character. Just think of how, because I know anytime I promo, I think of what the predicament my character is in. Mm-hmm. Like as a manager, that say my champion is being, in my eyes, unfairly treated. And how would I react to that if it was me? If this was actually me in this position, how I'd be mad. So that's how I have to convey that. I don't have to go, I am really mad. I'm like, this is bullshit. And the more you do it real, the more people can connect with that. And I think that's something that you've been able to bring out in your character.
Sure. Jay Andrews said it beautifully the last time I saw him down in Melbourne. And it was when people get together and say, what do you want to do when they plan on spotting a match out? What do you want to do? That question needs to be centered around, who are you currently? Who am I currently? And how do we mesh together? And how does that change us coming out of this match? How are we different coming out the back end of this? Or is this just, spot, we all walk away and we come back and we do it again next month? There needs to be there needs to be a story that's told of my individual character. I always love, because I love talking, I love rabbiting on about, you know, no two matches can be exactly the same, even if they're between the two same people. It's like the old saying of, you know, the man in the river, how it can never be the same because the man is not the same and the river is not the same. And this is exactly the same in pro wrestling. If I wrestled Michael Morleone the middle of last year or late last year, and we had an EPW title match, if we wrestle again in 6 months' time, the match cannot be the same. The motivations cannot be the same. The story cannot be the same because we're in two different places. We've had wrestling experiences in front of these crowds that they have seen us take in. We're not the same people anymore. We're not the same characters, and we're not in the same position. So when you look to approach a match, you have to say, what do we want to say here? That's the most important thing. What do we want to say? Not what do we want to do? What do we want to say? Then you go about, how are we going to say it? Now that's a trickier one, because that comes down to creative license. And if you put me, Mick Moretti, and Adam Brooks in the same situation, facing the same guy, we will approach it three completely different ways, because myself, Moretti, and Brooksy are so different from each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I know the last show we had up here was Jake Nova, Tim Cade, and EC Diamond. We had a triple threat, and EC wanted to do all this, like take all this stuff from Jake and Tim, and we've all just said, no, this match is to make you. This is our goal for this match, is to have everyone think at the end of this match, you are on the same level as us. Because Tim and Jake, they've made their bones up there. Everyone knows who they are, and they're known as main event guys. You can put them on the top of any card in Queensland, and people are going to know that's a great match. So the idea behind this whole match was, we're going to lift you to this level. So this is what you're going to need to listen to us and do what we tell you to do, and realize why we're telling you to do this. And as soon as he realized what we were doing, he was just like, oh, okay, yes, whatever you need, we'll do this. Yes, I understand now. And that to me is worth, like, as soon as that happened, I'm like, well, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a success, because he's learned.
Yeah. You can't always give in the same way every single time. Otherwise, everything feels the same all the time. If you can give in different ways, and, you know, there's someone who's a good matchup for me where maybe I look a little stronger, even though that person might be higher on the card than I am. And then there are other people who I don't match up well with, and I should struggle more with those people. It's great, because it's the same way that certain sports teams match up really well. You know, there have been football teams that, even though they're at the bottom of the ladder, they've just got the wood over this top team, and they just never lose to them every time they get together.
Yeah, and there are also some guys that, for some reason, the more you beat up on them, the more the crowd gets behind them. And oftentimes the guys don't understand that. They're just like, I think I should be looking strong. You don't have to look strong, mate. You don't understand. The more we do this to you and you get your comeback, that's when the crowd's going to come with you. They're already there with you. You're just going to have to, you just got to keep, like, dragging them on until it's ready, till it's time. And we will tell you when it's time. Then you'll know.
There's some really interesting cases of that in wrestling at the moment. Like Honma in New Japan has definitely been a case like that, where people, they want to see him almost win, but maybe they don't really want to see him win all that much. And I think Darby Allin's in a really tricky spot at the moment, where he's such a fantastic underdog who fights from underneath, but he rarely wins the big moment. And it becomes an interesting balancing act when that is what you rely on to get over. And he's amazing at it. But when you rely on not quite achieving and being the underdog, how do the fans react to you when you do start succeeding? So that's it's a really tricky. Like you said, you can't make everyone in exactly the same mold, and some people will be that lucky underdog who maybe gets to the top of the card but doesn't stay there for very long, because they stay more over by fighting from underneath than they do from sitting on top of the pack.
Yeah, and there's also a case of you can build it up for so long, and then if you don't give the payoff, then it just dies away anyway, and you've missed that chance to give the crowd that release that they've been building up for God knows how long.
Which you could say for both Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston, that in both cases WWE missed the boat, and the fans were willing to land a second shot in their laps for them and just say, we are going to go with these guys one more time and see if you can get it right. And they did in the end.
I almost felt the same way about the whole Cody and MJF thing. I think they built that up so perfectly for Cody to actually win that. And when he lost it, you could almost feel the crowd go, oh, well, he's never going to win anything big, is he? Because every time they built him up, this is my last chance. If I don't win this match, I'm never going to contend for the title again. He lost that.
Yeah.
They did the whole big build for MJF. There was nothing really on the line aside from winning the match. So Cody could have won that quite easily, and MJF wouldn't have lost anything from it just because he's got that mouth. That mouth 100 times, 100 times out of 100 is going to get him the exact heat that he gets anyway. Yeah. So I just, it's hard. It's such an interesting balancing act, this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating watching it because there are, you have situations like the story of Okada beating Tanahashi at the Dome. And you can tell that story over 3 or 4 years if you have the patience to do that, and if your fans have the patience to do that. So the ability to tell maybe this story between Cody and MJF, and it looks like they've veered Cody off in another direction for the moment, but maybe this story pays off in 6 months' time or 12 months' time. And I think because we love to talk about wrestling so much, we love to analyze it, we love to break it down and see what people are doing right and wrong, that we're often too quick to write things off. I suppose also we have been incredibly burnt by WWE, who just seem to refuse to pay off a storyline in any satisfying way, that as fans, I think we've come to expect to not get the result that we want. So when you veer off down that track where they go, we're not done with the heat, we're going to take the heat one step further than you thought we were going to, then a lot of fans throw their hands up in the air and go, well,
yeah, they've
ruined it. But really, perhaps if we have the patience, they are building to something greater. And, the Naito and Okada match at the Dome this year was such a great example of that they had the patience of Naito failing at the Dome, much like Okada did with Tanahashi, and they finally got around to paying it off this year. But it wouldn't have had the heat that it did this year if they hadn't have held off on that in the previous years, where, the LIJ fans, especially the American LIJ fans, were just jumping up and down and you ruined it. No. Sometimes you just got to have a little patience, and we'll get to where you want to go, but just hang in there.
Yeah, I had the discussion this week with somebody about it, and I think I equated it to, like, half the time it's the way that the uber wrestling fans critique wrestling that makes it hard. Like, if you'd have had this same sort of environment media-wise back in the 80s in WCW, how many people would have been like, oh, Dusty, they'd be right, he books so he puts the belt on himself. Oh, yeah. Oh, the Road Warriors never sell anything. They're just so uber strong. What are they? Like, it just... We look back on that stuff now and we go, that's amazing. That's such a good moment. I just wonder that if that was in today's world, if people would have shit on it as soon as it happened.
Sure. Yeah, maybe. And I suppose the trick is being able to move with the times, which I think I speak largely for wrestling fans, that I think WWE have failed to move with the times. And that there are, but that I don't get hung up on that. I'm not gonna. I'll bash them over their lack of morals and their ability to lean back on corporate diffusion of responsibility as ways of getting into questionable business practices. But I won't. I'm from an artistic standpoint, I'm not interested in bashing too many things that I don't like. I'd rather just find the things that I do enjoy and I do support. And I will say there have been some people who've been really instrumental in helping me develop a taste for a newer style of pro wrestling and pointing me in the right directions. And from both a hip hop standpoint and a wrestling standpoint, J-Rock was incredibly responsible for, because I was definitely, maybe about 8 years ago, I was one of those guys, I want my wrestling like I used to have it, and what was me? And he was the one that said, mate, there is plenty of good wrestling out there, you're just not looking hard enough. And sure enough, I opened my eyes, and there's amazing wrestling going on everywhere. And if anything, we've had this explosion of wrestling where the 5-star match almost feels like the 4-minute mile that just, we needed someone to a few people to cross the finish line and get that result. And then the world went, oh God, we can achieve the 4-minute mile. And I think a lot of independent wrestlers did the same. The first time independent wrestlers got given a 5-star match and melt. So you're like, oh, we can create these incredible moments. We can create this drama. We can tell these amazing stories. We don't need to be in the WWE or WCW or New Japan to have this platform to be able to tell a story. Good storytelling is good storytelling, no matter where it takes place. And just seeing someone else do it, seeing Punk and Joe do it, and the rest of the world went, hang on, if they can do it, maybe we can do it too. And I think it's shown throughout wrestling all around the world that people are no longer content just using the indies as a training ground to go get a job in WWE or somewhere else with a bigger platform, but that this is a place where we can create something really special and put the world's attention on ourselves through VOD or whatever fashion we can do it, that we can create these really amazing moments here in our very own backyard, and the world can be exposed to them.
Because if you do live that dream, that you won't have the freedom that you've got in the independence to chart out a match that you want to do, because it's just it's not there in that environment. Whether it be good or bad, it's just not there. They for a long time, they have done what they do incredibly well, and they've been able to build a humongous empire off the back of it. But it's not for me, but they've created something amazing there. But yeah, there's plenty of wrestling out there that I do love and that I do enjoy, and people who still make me excited about wrestling and make me feel something when I see them wrestle and struggle. And those, I'd rather spend my time invested and focused on those things than worrying about things that just aren't for me anymore. Do you worry at all with what's happened currently, that when everything gets back to whatever the new normal is, that we'll have missed this boom that we seem to be having in Australian wrestling? Or do you think we're just gonna?
It's really hard to tell, and I think it depends on the timeline of how things kick back off in society when we finally get the opportunity to. There are some people who lean on the more positive side and say wrestling gatherings are generally between 200 to 400 or 500 people in this country, and I think people will feel more comfortable going to a show with 200 people than they might be heading to a stadium with 60,000 people. And that potentially we will also, I think, get the opportunity to open earlier than rock concerts or huge sporting events will get to, again, just sheerly through population and attendance sizes. So the positive people say we're probably going to get a chance to go back to our form of live entertainment before a lot of people get that opportunity. And maybe this is a chance to shine an even bigger spotlight on ourselves. But there are also people who, there's so many ways you can argue about it negatively to say people aren't going to want to go to a wrestling show where you do sit on top of each other, or that this period, we've seen it in terms of TV wrestling, at least, that interest in the product has dropped off dramatically, and that maybe people just realize wrestling is this really frivolous, childish habit that I'd gotten into for years and years, and I've outgrown it, and I needed this period of the world shutting down for me to realize that I don't enjoy it anymore, and I don't have room in my life for it. And I certainly hope people don't feel that way, because I think selfishly, I think we've all still got a lot of stories that we want to tell before it's all said and done. But there's also the argument of how will it change wrestling? What things are acceptable for heat and what aren't? If you spit on an opponent, how would a wrestling audience treat that these days? I know it would always get you heat back in the day, and I remember after the Iron Man match with Jag, we shook hands and I spat in his face. And even in 2005, we had fans who were smart fans. They knew it was sports entertainment, or whatever you'd like to call it, that we were out there in a theatrical performance, and we still had complaints saying how disgusting it was that I spat in Jag's face, and this sort of thing's unacceptable and we shouldn't be doing this. And this is in 2005, before any pandemics had broken out. How are fans going to feel about the behavior of heels in a wrestling ring? What are we going to deem as being acceptable? Am I allowed to fish hook a person anymore? Should I be putting my hands in someone's mouth? That seems questionable at this stage. Should I be spitting at someone? That seems questionable.
Can you even give them a solid handshake at the end of it, mate? Or is it just going to be elbow bumps?
Yeah. Look, I would think if we're going to have all that contact for 20 minutes, a little handshake at the end shouldn't upset too many people. But yeah, it's hard because, I've had times where I'm bleeding and sweating and someone throws me into the crowd. How's the crowd going to feel about that when we go back? Because I imagine people are going to be very wary of physical contact with strangers still for a long period of time, because we have no idea what COVID-19 is going to do. When Australia has done incredible up until this point, but we don't know what's going to happen, whether there's going to be a second wave when we reopen society and we start to open shops again and kids go back to school. If there is a second wave, and that wave is even more serious than the first, which has happened with pandemics in the past, that potentially you're going to feel very shy about attending any live events. You're going to feel shy about being in close contact with people. And you're certainly not going to want a sweaty 40-year-old half Asian being backdropped into you in the crowd while he's bleeding and sweating all over the place, mate.
Oh, jeez. It's quite an image you've pictured, you painted there, sir. Look, I think we'll wrap up this portion of the vodcast. For those of you that are listening on the podcast version, you're going to head straight to me wrapping up the show. Watching the vodcast, we're going to go to something new, where I'm going to watch a match that Davis has picked out, and we're just going to talk about what was happening during the match and that sort of stuff. Very much experimental. If it's shit, then this is all on me. It's not Davis's fault at all. So, do that. I just completely absolved you of anything right there.
I'm in a no-lose situation here. I can be as unentertaining and boring and self-indulgent as I like, and I'm going to get away with it, mate.
I've been doing it for 6 years, so it's fine. Just for those that are listening on the podcast, give out your socials so everyone can follow you and see what Davis Storm's up to. And some of his tweets, brilliant stuff, so get onto him.
I am EPW Davis Storm everywhere, only on the 3 major platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My Instagram's a private account. It's only because I put up a lot of pictures of my everyday life, including lots of pictures of my kids. So so long as I tend to check out most of the accounts that I allow in before I accept them, which it seems a bit strange for someone who's in such a public position as a professional wrestler. But yeah, that's my one area that I like to control a little bit.
Oh, mate, fans do not get approved on my Facebook. They just don't. Sorry, they just don't. Because I had one instance at, and I've always been like this, but I had one instance at back at RCW. It was just after I'd gotten married, and we were pulling down the ring, and this fan leaned over and just go, "Oh, I saw your photos of your wedding. It looked really nice." I'm like, "How the fuck did you see?"
Yep.
And it's just, yeah, with the amount of heat I like to get, I would rather them not know who my wife is.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Keep them safe, mate. Keep the family safe.
That's right. Well, thanks for joining me for this portion, sir.
Awesome. Thanks for the chat, man.
All right. So, just for the people that haven't been following EPW, what was sort of led up to this match with you and Marcus?
So I've been on a bit of a losing streak in my major matches in Western Australia. So it started with losing the EPW Championship to Michael Morleone, which I think was the end of 2017 or 2018. And then I had gone on to lose to my former stablemate, the Warship. And then lost to Minoru Suzuki at the New Japan Tour of Australia. That took place in an EPW ring. Then went on to lose to Pete Dunne at Progress versus EPW. From there, lost to Gavin McGavin and took a fair bit of time off after that to sell this losing streak that I've been on. But from a standpoint of helping with the shows, it was more important to me through that time to be giving feedback to the guys and being backstage and trying to help in that capacity rather than taking up time in the ring. So went away for a while, and then we eventually built back to me wrestling Michael Morleone one more time for the belt, where the story was that I was trying to win the gold to show my kids that I could be a champion. I fell short again in that one, which drew the Untouchables, Marcuis Pitt and Damian Slater, out to mock me and try to tell me to get the hell out of EPW. We had a tag match at our biggest show of the year, which I also lost, which then led us to this moment where at the previous show I'd come out and challenged Marcuis Pitt, who he's been a 5-time EPW champion. I've been a 6-time EPW champion, and throughout that time we have battled for the EPW championship time and time again, and most of my best matches that I've ever had have come across the ring from Marcuis Pitt. So from a character motivation, my character needed the best test that he's had in his entire career to re-find his form, and for me to decide whether or not I could still hang, and if I could hang, to continue to be a part of EPW, and if I couldn't, to be gone. That was the whole catchphrase for this event, was be great or be gone. And if I lost this match, I would have to leave EPW forever. If I won, I would be the EPW Coastal Champion for the very first time.
Marcus, I don't understand how he hasn't popped off like anywhere else major, because the dude has got everything when you look at him, hasn't he?
He is. He's remarkably talented. He has a great in-ring charisma. He is 100% committed to everything that he does in the ring, both from a physical and a character standpoint. He looks $1 million. He's always looked $1 million. And he's just an incredibly smart wrestler in the way that he structures his matches and the choices he makes, the decisions he makes. He's absolutely one of the best in this country, and in my opinion, right up there with the best in the world.
I got some big shoulder blocks.
Yeah, so we're trying to get off. I like I like big matches that get off to a nice slow start. I'm a huge fan of the New Japan style of main event. We're just feeling each other out in the early stage, and I suppose a lot of the story is me not being sure if I can hang with him anymore and trying to feel my way through it because I don't want to make a mistake. I know that one mistake with this guy can lead to my downfall, and I'm trying really hard to get slowly out of the blocks here, and we're just showing the physical dominance that he has over me early in the part, and now I'm trying to use my wrestling to get back into the match.
Beautiful. Nice headlock takeover. I'm going to start commentating this soon. I know.
So here's a little thing that he's getting his forearm up in my face there. A lot of wrestlers release the headlock to deal with the forearm that's being given to them. From my own point of view, wrestling should be king here. So he can put his hand in my face, but the headlock is the dominant position. Wrestling is king. So I should be able to control him simply by tightening the headlock and not by having to release my hand to brush his hand away.
And that's the thing, like actually thinking about it in that, like that position. Do you know what I mean? Like you're actually thinking about what you would do if this was a shoot.
Yep, it's a dominant position. I should be able to hold on to that position by just asserting control. This is one of my favourites. The Minoru Suzuki armbar. I do it over the ropes. He does it through the ropes.
What was it like? What was it like working here? Because that would have been an absolute, for someone who's a New Japan nut like yourself, that would have been an absolute like game changer for you, wouldn't it?
It was both exciting and the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my life. Partly being on that New Japan stage, which I have to thank our buddy Gino Gambino for, but also because of the respect and esteem that I have for Minoru Suzuki and the fact that he was a complete gentleman to me, but it was very clear 100% of the time that if he wanted to end my life at any minute, he absolutely could.
I was equating it to like watching him walk out with that towel on his head would be like watching The Undertaker's entrance from the ring.
Yeah. It was pretty exciting to stand in the ring and get to watch him walk to the ring with the towel on the head. Kaze Ninore playing in the background. It was an amazing experience.
I like how Marks is selling that arm too. That's so good.
Yeah,
that he's keeping on him. Too many times you see guys just forget that.
Singles matches I've had have been Marcuis Pitt, Adam Brooks, and the Don Michael Morleone, who are three of the best in the country, and I've focused pretty heavily on the arm work in all three of those matches, which has become a bit of a staple for me. I like having a central point that I can continue to tie the match back to at all times.
Well, and like massive Arn Anderson fan. That's something that he used to do, and I used to love when you'd see him just decide which part of the body he was going to take, and he would keep working on it. And if the guy started coming for the comeback, it was a quick shot to that knee, or it was a quick whatever to the arm, just to remind them that that's what I've been working for the whole match.
Yeah, I do. I like leg work, but I don't like doing it because either it messes with the flow of the match, or the person doesn't sell it enough.
Yeah.
Whereas an arm or a rib is a much easier thing for them to sell and still be able to move consistently. So that should have been a leg drop. It ended up being a Kofi Kingston boom drop there. He's just a little bit too far away for me. So this is Marcus's manager, Amber, who's looking to insert herself into the match. That's my buddy Richter, a mainstay here in EPW. it was the one tricky thing you'll see as this match plays out is there's a lot of interference and storytelling going on as the match goes on, and it was quite tricky for us to balance those things without turning the match into a complete shit show.
Yeah. That's one thing I found as a manager. I've had to tell guys a lot of times, stop using me so much. Like, use me at key points. I want almost people to forget I'm there until I have to do something.
Yep.
So, because at the end of the day, the match isn't about me; it's about the guys in the ring.
Yep.
If I'm a part of it, it should be to turn the match one way or the other. Like, I fuck up and my guy loses, or I do something good and the way we cheated helped us.
I agree. If you're going to have external characters there, they've got to be fundamental to the storytelling of what's going on. Or in a case like here where, so we needed the match to feel like it was my last. And so starting with the build-up, where we had wrestlers going online and saying what their favourite Davis Storm moments were, so that it would feel like we were nice power slam there. He's one of the best at that. I really believe that.
It was very Dustin Rhodes-like.
Yeah. Geez, Dustin's got an amazing one. So through the promotion we're doing online, we needed to make it feel like if this was my last match, what would EPW be doing in order to make it feel like a proper send-off? So wrestlers were talking about their favourite moments or their favourite memories of me. And then on the night, I was having a real hard time dealing with the fact that Marcus would come to the ring with Amber, and I just thought that I had teamed with Richter to face the Untouchables just 3 months ago, and he's widely known as one of my best friends in wrestling and in life. And I just thought it didn't make any sense for him not to at least accompany me to the ring. If this was my last match and I was going to be fighting for my life and he did have someone out there to interfere on his behalf, it didn't make any sense for me as the babyface to not have any friends who were willing to come out and stand in my corner. It made me look like as the match plays on and more people get interfere in the match, it just made him as my friend look completely worthless, that he wouldn't even take the time to come out and help me fight for my career.
I've always said that when you see like a babyface getting beaten down by multiple heels, like, why wouldn't the other guys in the back come out and help?
Yeah.
Like babyfaces are shit friends, really, when you think about it.
Really not.
Oh.
Yep, there goes.
That can't tickle for a guy that size too, because it's not like he really slowed up when he went through the ropes at you. That was full ball.
Yeah, look, he said to me a few times during the day, I'm gonna come steaming in, Davey. And sure enough, he sure did. And much like you were alluding to, Amber, we had a few sort of fake cutoffs throughout this early period where it looked like Marcus was getting on top, and then I was able to re-establish myself. And then this is the real turning point of the match, and Amber was right there to grab the leg. Like you said, you want those external characters, those third characters. If they're just going to be there and they're not going to play a fundamental part in the match, there's really no purpose in even having them there. So you've got to pay respect to the fact that they're there and use them to help you in your match. The goal is to get over it. If you can use these people, they gain from it, that they're going to get heat for it, and I'm going to gain from it because I'm fighting against two people now instead of one.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea of it too. It's creating that unfair disadvantage. Like I know a lot of times people, the perception is going into a match against Jake, you're not just fighting Jake, you've got to deal with what I'm going to do to you on the back, on the outside as well. It's very much like any time they go into a match, the crowd feels like it's 2 versus 1.
Yep. So here's where I think Marcus really sets himself apart from a lot of modern day Aussie wrestlers, is that there is a lot of guys who can make a crowd cheer and can make a crowd boo, but he's he's able here to do so very little and still keep the crowd engaged in what he's doing, still follow the story of leading us to where we're going, tying in all these ends. He's punishing me. He's also able to get Amber still involved in the match to heighten the 2-on-1 advantage again. But he's not just going a billion miles an hour. He's giving everyone a chance to digest what has happened and appreciate the odds that I'm up against and understand that I'm fighting for my career here. And I'm now in this unfair 2 against 1. They outsmarted me. They were able to get my tag partner out of the building. And now he's at a point where he realizes this is the last time I'm going to be able to beat this old man up. So I'm going to take my time and enjoy this and lay an absolute walloping on him.
I love those the little slaps.
Yep.
It's the moves in between the moves.
And again, he's building up a head of steam. Oof. Speaking of.
Wowee.
So, again, it's just a back elbow. But if you can do things at a high level of intensity, you don't need to, if your back elbow looks like that, you don't need to do all the flashy moves in the world, because that still gets a great reaction. It still has a huge impact. It still helps tell this story. I don't think I've ever, and I would like to credit us as part of it by saying that we kept Amber very involved in this match. But you can see there, I thought she was at her best. When I'm not talking to her, telling her to do anything, she's just naturally reacting to the situation. She's invested in what's going on in the ring, because a lot of managers just get left on the outside doing nothing because the wrestlers don't want to spend the time to write in intelligent spots and give them good opportunities to get heat.
Yeah, and that's, There've been guys that I've worked with that have been like that, and it's a hard, and they can't work out why it's not working. I was like, well, because you're not listening to me. I'm trying to help you make it work.
It's hard for the fans to accept that you would have an extra person on the outside who's there to help you win the match, and you wouldn't utilize them, and that they wouldn't feel invested enough in your result to actually help you. When you don't involve the third person in the match, you're really making them look silly, and you're making it hard for the audience to accept that anything could be the end of the match until that person gets involved in the match.
Yeah. Oh, good eyes.
I'd say
I love that dizzy.
I'm not a suicide dive guy, and someone told me to dive here, and then I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but someone told me to dive here, and then when I did, there was no water in the pool, mate.
Oh, oh wow! You went sideways.
Yeah, because I don't.
Is it because you were afraid of catching your feet?
I thought he was going to cut me off. I thought he was going to, as I stuck my head through the ropes. Then all of a sudden I got to the ropes and I'm like, he's not going to be there. So I need to make some attempt to get out through the ropes.
Oof, solid. Remember we had a kid like that at Venom. We did the spot where I'm going to be on the apron. This is like towards the end of the match, sort of like to cut me off so I can't break up a pin, so that the tag team get the victory. I'm like, come through and just spear me through the ropes. And he was a little guy. He's like, oh, you're going to be all right to take it? It's like, I'm 115 kilos, mate. I'm going to be able to catch you. And, like, the only thing you're going to land on is me. Of course, he freaked out and went sideways like you did on that dive and just ate shit right next to me. And as we were lying down, I just went, you idiot. It's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I got a solid talking to from my wife, who helps run front of house for EPW, for hitting the rail so many times in this match. And I'll be honest, with the exception of one, there's one big one coming up later, but with the exception of that, I was not responsible for hitting the rail the other 3 or 4 times that I did. In order to keep the peace at home, I will squarely put all of the blame on Mr. Marcuis Pitt for those other infractions.
I'm not in charge of heat, honey.
So like you were saying before, he was just patting me around the head before. Now we're getting into a little bit more.
I love the way you're selling this too. Like you can tell, you can see it, like the anger bubbling up inside you.
There's so many ways to... There's so many ways to express anger and frustration without just yelling and screaming and carrying on. And sometimes it's just your posture or the way that you're holding your body or the way that he was hitting me and kicking me in the head, but my head wasn't really moving and my body wasn't moving. And the stiffness of your body is kind of its own sense of defiance. I can tell you every trade-off with Marcuis Pitt is a very physical one. So,
Although it looks like you got him a beauty with one of those chops on his chest.
Oh yeah, for sure. Look, you give as good as you get, mate. As you know, both from a working point of view, this is how I like to work. I like him coming in and I like to dish him out. But also, as a babyface, I have to give as good as I get. There's nothing less satisfying for the fans than seeing a heel beat the shit out of a babyface than the babyface not having the will to be able to fight back and give as good as they got.
Oh, yes. Very good. Oof. The worst thing people don't even realize is those chops are the worse than half of the stuff you take in matches.
They don't tickle, that's for sure.
Nah, there's no way you can pull a chop, and when you do, the crowd knows it because they shit on it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we tried to focus on in this match was building to the bigger moves, building while not having an over-reliance on near falls.
Yeah, I was going to say you haven't really had any falls at all yet.
No, and that was definitely a strong focus. Was I didn't just want. I feel like, especially when you're fighting for your career, you should be kicking out of just about everything, but that can really wear an audience out, both on a night during a match, but also long term as well. If you don't need it and there's the emotional investment there, which there definitely was.
Oh, that's a rough bump.
He was determined to fly as hard into that buckle as he could off the Euro after seeing Brooksy take it, and Brooksy did such an incredible job with it. He was determined to fly as far as he possibly could.
I'm the same every time I have to take one of Toby's, what's his name, stunners, the flip stunner.
Yep.
I said to him, every time I take that, I'm going to try and beat Scott Halls.
Yep. Awesome.
And there was one thing where I think I did it like 2 shows in a row, and we went to do it the 3rd show. I said, maybe I should stop doing this. I've been doing it every show just because I've been having fun taking it.
Yeah.
Like, we worked it into a promo just because I wanted to take it one extra time. Oof.
So that was that last one was the first big near fall of the match, and
yes.
I'll say, I don't generally use a double stomp, so it wasn't like we were blowing one of our big moves down the stretch either.
You legit have to hold on for dear life for this thing.
Yeah. And he makes it very clear to me that I don't trust many people to lean back like this. You hold on to those fucking ropes.
Especially with those, because those ropes, if that's a humid night, they become so slippery too.
Yeah, they can do.
I love the block with the leg through the ropes too. So good.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah. I just like stuff to, there's always, it's wrestling. There's always some things that don't make sense. But if things can make sense to people who are watching as much as possible, if you can not insult their intelligence as often as possible throughout the course of your match, and you don't blow any spots and look silly, I think you've gone a really long way towards having a good match.
This has to suck. Oh, actually, not a bad landing.
It wasn't at all, really. I was he legitimately has the best German suplex I've ever taken.
Yeah, it was very, very from the angle he was at too. It was very controlled, very controlled. And again, it's just another thing. I don't know why he hadn't done more like Japan tours, or do you know what I mean? It's one of those things that baffles me.
A lot of things just come down to timing. So one of the things we definitely wanted to squeeze in here was just
good near fall.
Near falls off classic wrestling rather than an over-reliance on big moves. It's definitely what the sunset flip was trying to. You want to impose the fact that you're trying to win the match any way that you can. My only regret maybe is the placement of that German suplex over the previous one, because obviously generally wrestling, you like
bigger
wrestling
the smaller the bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. So in hindsight, that's something. And in turn, the fans let us know too. They didn't shit on it because I think it looks great. It had a lot of impact, but it's after you've just seen a German off the second rope, a pass by German probably doesn't have the same level of impact that it could have had.
Still, he did cut by going in for the cover as quick as he did, gave it that sense of urgency.
Yeah. And sometimes, that's what pinfalls are about in terms of the story. It's more about showing your intent to win rather than it actually being a moment where you could win. So he's trying to finish me off with my own finishing move there, the ultimate insult, to be able to retire me with my own move.
So at this point, how gassed are you?
Well, I'm actually okay. That's probably one of the best ones
beautiful
I've ever hit. Yeah, I guess I'm pretty pumped up for this match, and I've been working pretty hard leading into it as well. Having the match with Brooksy, who definitely cuts a faster pace than myself and Marcus do, probably helped.
Just a little bit. Yeah. Oh.
So again, trying to, there's so many elements at play in that moment that he's willing to sacrifice her in order for him to win the match. That he's willing to put her in harm's way. And now here I am, such a nice guy, so distraught that I've hurt this poor young lady who's been cheating the whole match. And here's where my wife was very unhappy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
So I'll give you a little inside wrestling scoop here. My plan, you can see two guys in EPW shirts in the front row. My plan in my head was to clear the rail and hit the two guys in the front row. It didn't quite play out that way in actuality. So, yeah.
Marcus is going to pop those hips for you, mate.
Oh, look. It worked out better. It worked out better this way.
Yeah, just the bend on that bloody railing too.
Yeah. So this was one of the moments that I think if you use them effectively, especially in a match like this where so much is on the line, this count out is probably our best near fall for the entire match.
Yeah, it's good. I love the heel wanting to take the count out win too.
Yep. Just win any way that you can at this point.
Yeah. The way he's on the referee's back to tell him to like keep counting, which is breaking the count at the same time. Like slowing up the count at the same time. This is brilliant. I love it.
Yep, and his reaction, like you said, the reaction before and then the reaction afterwards too. This is a legitimate near fall, you know. He had the match won. He was just a second away from winning the match.
Oh, nice deadlift. Solid clothesline too.
Yeah, he doesn't do a lot that isn't on the money. Surely
Makes it good.
Oh, what a warrior!
Again, I blame the referee. Referee out of position.
Classic slow count. Come on, ref.
That is my favourite thing to do as a manager. It's one of my favourite things to do. Is every time my guy gets pinned, I yell at him because he counts too quick. Every time my guy's pinning someone, I yell at him because he's counting too slow. I love it because there's always that one or two fans in the front going, "Which way do you want it? Which way do you want it?" As soon as I hear that, I'm like, "Gotcha. That's all I wanted. Thank you." Two teased ref bumps, and
you get there. You get there in the end.
Toughen up, son.
I've got him.
Where's the ref? Lackadaisical pin though, mate. I don't want to get on you or anything, but there you go.
I had to switch. I just couldn't get I wanted to stack him, and I couldn't get his other leg, so I had to switch and actually hit him and hook the leg.
I could just see people now.
Little things like I hit my finish, but the finish is kind of protected because the ref's there with the slow count. Little thing on Slater's part, he hits the ref from behind, not from in front, so there's no willingness to DQ Pitt later on.
That's the thing. Back in the day, I never would have seen Slater as a heel either. He was such the white meat babyface.
Yep. I think it's fair to say that that's as much a reflection on the change in wrestling fans also, that they don't necessarily want to cheer the excellent technical wrestler who happens to be a handsome bloke with an amazing body. They hate that guy.
I think that's half of how Cree got over as a heel, because he was the same.
Yep.
We didn't think there's any way anyone was going to boo him because he's very much the hometown boy, and that was the reason I got put with him, to try and give him some heat, a bit more.
Yep.
But yeah, they loved to boo him for that time that he was a heel.
So this bit might be a bit confusing to people, but Julian Ward essentially joined the Untouchables in this exact same fashion, where he clipped someone with the kendo stick on behalf of Slater and Pitt. But the entire time, the relationship's been very testy, particularly between Slater and Ward. They lost the tag match earlier in the night, but the whole time, their relationship has basically been Slater and Pitt trying to self-serve themselves by having Ward as part of their entourage, but them never really believing that he could be as good as they are. So this was his breaking point. So it's cool because we've tried to play with the crowd a lot here. That the ref going down was supposed to be the emotional swing that they go, oh shit, he's gonna get screwed here. And we're kind of building to that moment now. Earlier in the night, Gavin McGavin won a number one contenders match for a shot at the winner of this match. And Marcuis Pitt came out at the end of the match and hit him with the belts in the back of the head, which was a bit of misdirection on our part, that we thought if you throw those two out there and get them in each other's faces already, then people are going to think that there's no way that I'm winning tonight because we're already building towards this other match.
Is this Gavin turning face now?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, he's got to wrestle me next, and it'll be an interesting contrast to see where the character goes from here. Oh, got him.
Oh. Come on, Hebner. Jeez. No, very good. Love the fire. Good fire.
Big flurry, yeah.
There we go. He's done it, ladies and gentlemen. A boyhood dream.
So the finish we discussed a fair bit, and not finishing on the belt shot, which Pitt in particular thought was very important, and I think it does. It's important that as a babyface, I'm not winning on the screwy finish. That you could make an excuse that that if the ref hadn't have been so slow to the count, that I would have won on the belt shot, and that's fine. But also, I think it brought us such a great near fall there. We knew the audience would really, really bite on that one, but it was important to us not to reset again and feel like we were going into finisher mode, but that we rode the momentum of the reaction of the kick out and quickly moved it along. And you were saying during the end there, a lot of fire. I knew both of us would have to be selling a lot in that closing stretch there, because we needed the fans to feel like something's happening. We're not about to go into a lull. Don't let that noise go away. Let that noise continue, because we're going on with it from here. So he kicks out, and unlike a lot of near falls where you kick out and you lay around for a bit, he kicks out and he immediately starts making his way back to his feet after the kick out, and I back up into the corner and start to charge up, and we just on any given night, those three moves, I potentially would use any of them for a falsie: the running knee to the head, the eye of the storm, and then the I guess you call it the V trigger these days. But yeah, and,
that one, the one you hit then would look like it was almost like a spitting neck breaker, sort of like, but in the.
Yeah, I've used it sparingly. First time I used it was years ago with Carlo Cannon. We'd work together a fair bit, and we were just searching for ways to do things differently together. And that was one cool thing that Carlo was able to suggest. Why don't you just try spinning into it? And I've used it very sparingly. But yeah, it seemed like because I'd hit the normal one earlier, it seemed like as good an opportunity as any. And just to get that heightened reaction too of elevating, without doing too much sort of out of the ordinary. And just the finish. If anyone has stuck around and listened to me waffle on all this time, the one thing that I can press to them is just, particularly in the closing stretch, in the opening stretch and the closing stretch, you can see how much the match means to us. And that, luckily for us, that stretches beyond kayfabe as well. But just as characters, this match means something to us. And there was so much riding on the line. But if in that near fall spot, Marcuis isn't in the ring pushing the referee to get him to count me out and reacting reacting so heavily. And then when I roll back into the ring, there's that moment of, oh my God, he got his way back in there. If you don't explain your emotions to the fans through your physical actions, and this is the charades conversation we were having from earlier, but I hear too many wrestlers come back through a curtain and say, how was it, mate? Shit crowd. Was it a shit crowd? Or was it a shit performance? Because I find too many people are willing to lean on that. I don't care if the audience has been dead silent for every match before I go out there. I am going to do everything in my power to turn that audience around. I don't make excuses for myself. And at the end of the day, maybe it is a bad crowd. I'm not saying there is no such thing as a bad crowd. You're never going to run into them. But if you start to buy into that idea of the bad crowd, you will be getting bad crowds everywhere you go. I guarantee it. Because that starts to become the crutch that you lean on. Just if I'm not getting what I wanted from them, it's their fault. Maybe, just maybe, you aren't explaining the story in a simple enough fashion to them. And maybe that's because you're trying to squeeze your shit in. Maybe that's because there's something that you want to do that makes no sense in the context of this match, but you learned it at training this week and you just have to get it out. There's a time and a place for everything. I've got a bigger bag of tricks than we pulled out in that match, and Marcuis Pitt has a much bigger bag of tricks than what he pulled out in that match. But it has to be time appropriate. You've got to wrestle the right way for the right situation. But particularly in the closing stretch, if younger wrestlers or less experienced wrestlers can focus on the level of investment that we have, the panic looks that we have, the selling that we have as we get so close to victory, how much that actually means to us. And I can tell you, I've had plenty of moments, and that was one of them, where I'm pinning someone for the 3 count, and I can hear myself in a panicked state almost, literally trying to hold them to the mat to make sure that I win the match. Because you have to believe on some level. I'm not saying you then say, well, I'm an indestructible babyface and I'm going to go start fights on the street because I'm such an incredible fighter. But I'm saying just take your work seriously. Put a level of investment into yourself and into your story that you're willing to offer it all. And sometimes, and this is something I had a lot of trouble getting over when I was younger, sometimes being tough and being the babyface involves you not looking cool. You do not have to come out of every situation looking cool, because when you are in a fist fight with another man or a woman and you are throwing forearms and knees and jumping around and sweating and doing all these things, you don't always look cool. You don't always have to brush your hair over to the side before you do something. If there is spit drooling from your face, maybe just let it go, because you're supposed to be in a life and death struggle where this match means so much to you that you are willing to put yourself in positions where things are going to be tough and you don't always look cool. And that's just how it goes. Not every fighter. How many fighters get mocked online after big losses because they looked silly in the moments where they got knocked out? You got to put everything on the line to be able to draw people in to think that what you are doing is real, in a sense that it means something to you. And if it doesn't mean something to you, it's certainly not going to mean something to anyone who's paid money to come along to watch you. If it means nothing to you, then what's the point of even doing it? This is an outlet for us to let our emotions out and tell our stories, not an acrobat. If you want to be an acrobatic performer, then there's a great career in Cirque du Soleil for you. But if you want to be a professional wrestler, then you better know how to tell a story. And that story doesn't have to be boring old guy versus boring old guy, headlock versus headlock. It can be exciting up-and-comer with all the party tricks versus exciting up-and-comer with all the party tricks where you're trying to outflash each other. And you do bring all of your tricks to that party. That's fine. But tell that story. Don't just go, we're going to go out there and do all our flashy shit and they're going to be invested. Give them a reason to care. Why does doing all the flashy shit mean something to you? Because you want to be the best flashy shit guy. That's fine. That's all the level of investment I need. I'm on board. Let's go. Because if I could do all that shit, I would do that shit too, man. I always say, when I say the moves don't matter, I don't mean don't do a 450. I mean, get people into the match, then do the 450. Because if I could do the 450, I sure as shit would.
Davis Storm, thank you so much for joining me on this, mate. I don't know if anyone that's watching this has learned anything from this, but I know I have. It's a hell of an education to sit down and break down one of your matches with you. Thank you again, sir.
It was an absolute pleasure, Todd. Thanks, man.
Once again, big thank you to David Storm for joining me, especially for joining me for that new segment, which if you were watching the podcast, I really do hope you enjoyed. It's something that I'm going to be doing a bit more often with probably some of the more veteran guys in Australian wrestling, because they have a lot more to be able to, I think they've got a lot more knowledge they can impart on hopefully younger wrestlers that are watching this, or even fans that are wanting to know what the inner workings are of professional wrestling. And also a big thank you to EPW for letting us use the match footage as well. It's a great help, and really integral part of doing that segment is being able to have the match there that we can look at and reference to during it. Also, our EPW on Vimeo, please subscribe to them, get there, and you'll be able to see all of their past events and all of that sort of, and the upcoming events that'll happen when we will get back to doing what we do. And yeah, if you watch that match, that's just a taste of the stuff you're going to get from EPW. So I really do recommend you get on that. Actually, I recommend you get on every bit of streaming platform that has Australian professional wrestling. That's PWA with OVO, that's YouTube with Riot City Wrestling and Australian Wrestling League, and was it PCW got their own one as well. I think even UPW up here have their own one. There's, you name it, everyone around has got it. If you go to your favorite promotion, look it up. I'm sure they have some version of a streaming service, or at least a backlog of their catalog that you can watch. Do get around them, because that's really what we need at the moment. We need everyone to band together as a family, just like we do in Australia. Just band together, we'll work together. We're going to get all through this. We're going to get through all of this together. If you did like the episode, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, smash the old subscribe button. Maybe hit the notification so you know when we do post these episodes. Podcasts, of course, we're on Apple Pods. We're on Spotify. You name it, we're on it. Anywhere you can get your podcast from, we're going to be on it. Of course, again, if you're listening to this on the podcast, do go and search out the podcast if you want to watch that match footage, because it was real fun. It was a good chat with Davis. Support the guys. Go and check out wrestlemerch.com. That's where a lot of Australian professional wrestlers have their merch on there. Pro Wrestling Tees have a few Australian guys. Go and support them if you can, of course, because we all know how hard these times are for a lot of people out there. But if you can support them, please support them. Go and buy some merch. Rep your guys. I've always rep the old loose ledge on here. So go and support the guys, and help us get through this time, because it is a rough time for anyone. It's a rough time for everyone, really. So just get out there and support it. If you go to Wrestle Radio, if you go to redbubble.com and search out Wrestle Radio Australia, we're on there. All of our merch, the money doesn't go to me. It goes to charities that I support. That is Beyond Blue and Gotcha for Life, two charities that support, of course, mental health, which is very, very much needed at this time, especially. And they're doing a lot of good work, especially Gotcha for Life, doing a lot of work with young men, teaching them how to talk about their feelings and talk about their problems. And as Davis referenced on this episode as well, it's always good to go and chat to each other and check out where you are. So please do that. If you have friends that you don't really talk to a lot, or you haven't seen for a while, check in on them, see how they're doing, check out their mental health. Just make sure we're all in this together, guys. So there we go. Is that about it? I've completely lost track of where I am right now in my normal spiel. That'll be it. Of course, the guest this week was supposed to be Rocky Monero. Unfortunately, he had internet issues, so we couldn't do that. But that will be done ASAP. And with Rocky, we'll be doing the same thing as we've done with Davis, with another match that he's going to pick out and we're going to talk through. So looking really forward to sitting down with Rocky and having a chat, just like I did this week with Davis. I think that's it, really. Follow us on follow us on Facebook, Wrestle Radio Australia. Instagram, Wrestle Radio AU, and also on Twitter at Wrestle Radio AU. I am at Beast Eastman on Twitter. Do follow me if you want. It's up to you guys. I post stuff and probably get myself in trouble more often than not. So that'll do us for this week at Wrestle Radio Australia. I'm Todd Eastman. Until next week, see you later. Be safe, stay inside, do everything we're supposed to do so we can get back to doing what we love to do every weekend. We'll see you then.